All right, squad. So my team wanted me to emphasize the system that we've developed for networking. It has come from this module networking 101. The reality is that I've been involved in networking, chambers of commerce, tips clubs, and so on and so forth for decades now, over 20 years. I've been, a member of multiple chambers, economic development centers, tips clubs, BNI, every different kind of networking you can imagine. And I've been an ambassador at the chamber. I've been a board member at chambers, at nonprofits, and so on. And so there's a lot to learn when it comes to service at that level. And obviously, it's not completely altruistic. When I'm involved in that, I'm attempting to find relationships and resources to benefit my business. So everybody is there to accomplish something for themselves. And so when I kind of came up with this formula somehow throughout the years, and look, this was, thousands, multiple different mixers and trade shows and lunch and learns. And, what happens at those places, people go to get drunk, they go to eat hors d'oeuvres, they go to talk about themselves, pretty much word vomit on everybody, everything that's going on with them, hand out their business cards, and then leave. And they wonder why business doesn't really come from that. The most effective strategy that I have found for networking is the same as the one that I was speaking to about in the last module, which is closers ask questions. And so when we go to networking groups, if we know that these people are just there to talk about themselves, well, then we should get really good at asking questions about what they do, how long they've been doing it, what did they do before this. And I promise you, every one of those questions gives you some kind of leverage in the conversation. But one of the most important questions we can ask is if they are in a leadership role, or whether they're in a leadership role or not, because a lot of these people that you meet are maybe not going to be the decision makers, right? Find out how many employees they have, how many coworkers they have. If they are in a leadership role, then we want to know and understand if they've ever leveraged any tax incentives. And so if you are just engaging them in this question-based framework and asking them questions about themselves, keep the questions coming, and you want to do it in a way that doesn't feel like an interrogation, right? They just want to talk about themselves anyway. So they're going to give you everything that you need, right? People just want to talk about themselves, especially at these networking groups. So let them talk, get them talking, ask them questions, get the information that you need. And then when they're done with their explanation of everything that's important to them, right? Because most of these people see this as an opportunity to pitch you on their services. Okay, like that's ultimately what they're doing. Is the more they talk, the more excited that you can become about what they do, right? So the idea is get them talking, ask them questions, keep them talking, and then at the end of their spiel, they will feel obligated to ask you, so what do you do, right? And the way that I have found it works most effectively for me, I kind of just brush it off. And I get paid to make friends. And they're like, oh, no, really, what do you do? What do you mean? I'm like, no, really, I get paid to make friends. Like, we specialize in found money for business owners, tax incentives, and other means of cost reduction. Like, oh, so what does that mean? Well, like for you, for example, you said you have 50 employees. Well, I know that this incentive is worth about $500 for every one of those employees. So if I told you there was, $25,000, available to you, would you be, would you want to be my friend? Right? If I could find you 25K in your business, would you appreciate that? Yeah. Would you want to tell your friends about it? Yeah. Right. Am I somebody you would want to spend some time with and figure out how much money there is in your business and how much of that we can help you get? Yeah. What if I told you that it wouldn't cost you anything out of pocket to participate in our services? What? How does that work? How is that possible? Are you saying it's free? Oh no, nothing is free, but we collect found money for you, right? And you just share a piece of that with us. A sloppy way to explain this is that we give you the money to pay us after the fact. If I found you 50K and you paid us something after the fact, would that be okay? Depends on how much. It's negligible. Matter of fact, this employee tax incentive that we're talking about doesn't cost you anything out of pocket. We get paid to implement the service, right? So it's a relatively simple strategy that gets them talking and positions you with the proper questions, with the proper frame to be consultative instead of pitchy, And so networking 101, best practices, no matter what group you're in, that's going to be the formula. Something else we should keep in mind is that mixers are not going to be very effective unless you just like to drink and eat hors d'oeuvres. Something else, when everybody wants to hand out their business cards, I don't do business cards. I have a schedule link. So it's one of the most effective things I typically do as well, is that when they say, oh yeah, that is interesting, do you have a business card? I'm like, nah, I don't like to kill trees. It's 2025, but here's my phone with my schedule link. Why don't you just go ahead? I don't do cards, I do appointments. Why don't you just go ahead and put your information in my phone, pick the time that works for you, and we're all set up. They just did their job, your job for them. They just did your job for you because they filled out the submission form and booked the time. Now the profile is in the CRM. Now they get the reminder. Your job is to just lead nurture them from there. You got to think too, when you hand somebody your phone, there people are private about their phone. They're precious. Right? This is my device. So I don't do business cards. I get paid to make friends. We find you money. It's not going to cost you anything. Here's the link. Let's schedule the appointment. These things are all very unique and they're not common. Most people in these groups are not going to be leveraging that strategy. So suddenly you become the most interesting person. You become the most unique process. Every one of those things is going to stand out. They're going to remember you. They're going to talk about you. They're going to show up to the appointment as long as you lead nurture. So just something to consider there. All right. So that is the whole best practices networking 101. There's going to be some follow-up modules here where I'm going to explain what are the best practices at each of these types of events. We'll see you on the other side.